Evening. Also, we're going to continue our tanking tribute. This really is, again, I think it's funny really because tanking is something that I would say is quite an ingenious kind of thing to do, because I think, you know, a lot of the time we generally find that the problem with the game is it can become a bit stale, and this comes from what I mentioned in a previous Kicking Dust, hopefully you saw it, which was the 3 dimensions of war in this game. And I think these 3 dimensions are suit or infantry, tanks and LAVs and vehicles, and ground-based vehicles, and then aerial vehicles, dropships and the like. And I would say currently that I think the reality is that when you look at a game like Planetary 2, you have those 3 things quite nicely balanced, because, you know, generally infantry is not really kind of taking out aerial units, but aerial units aren't terribly good at taking out infantry, and so on. So it's a bit of a kind of like rock, paper, scissors kind of thing. In Dust, everything can kill everything at any point, anytime anyway. So it's a bit kind of pointless to think, you know, a pretty decent swarm launcher can kill from a single trooper, can probably take down a vehicle, or a forge gun from a particular infantry dude can take down an assault dropship or a tank. So it's all a bit kind of, you know, at the top of the hierarchy, I would say, is infantry at all times. So this is why out of the 32 players deployed now, 30 of them rather are in infantry suits. The rest are, well, 2 of us in a tank. That's it. I mean, that's disappointing. And I think the shame of that is that there's, you know, 3 dimensions being turned into 1 dimension. And this is, I think, you know, CCP have a challenge to try and draw out and flesh out that as a better function within the game, because, you know, if Dust is going to become, you know, truly successful and brilliant and awesome and, you know, all the things it is now, but to be honest, more so, then these 3 dimensions need to be very, very clearly in the game. And I think currently they're not. Currently the 3rd dimension of aerial units is a complete wasteland. You get the odd person who will bring in an assault dropship, and as soon as somebody brings in a forge gun, they recall it or they just hide. That's shit. I don't like that. The 2nd dimension of tanks is better than the 3rd, but I would say that, you know, more people are still kind of, you know, drawing a tank in, it dies within 5 seconds, therefore what's the point? And I think when you look at a Seeker or a Soma being killed, even though, yes, it's cheap, it's, you know, ISK is still a powerful marker of success in this game. So if you lose all your money on a single tank for a round or 2 rounds, you know, cost worth, then they're just not going to use it. And I think that's a shame as well. You know, I'd almost make it so that you have like credits that earn up that give you a free tank or something like that. And the 1st dimension is obviously infantry, which is proliferated, to be honest, because everybody is running prototype and so on. So I think, you know, everybody's really good at the infantry game. Nobody's really thought about what the other part of the game is. And I do think that the marketing has been slightly problematic for this, because while tanks and dropships are in the game and other things, they're not particularly well marketed. They're not really shown as important and central to the game. And I think hopefully PvE will change this. A PvE could be something where you actually do need a tank. That would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? Like, you know, to do certain levels in Eve, you need a Logi, you need a Logi ship. Maybe maybe you need a tank to do certain mission. So, you know, even if it's a militia one that anybody can fit, just having that massive buffer of hit points, I don't know, that would make it awesome. Currently tanks in PvP are effective, but, you know, seldom really used a lot. I always wanted let me tell you a quick story. When I used to play Planetside 1, one of the best days of, you know, my gaming life in that game ever was when we had a great long bridge, and both teams were fighting along the length of this bridge, and it was basically, you know, each side of the coast of the shoreline was a different team, and there were tanks, there were aerial units. You know, you looked up and you saw this massive kind of dogfighting of, you know, vehicles and, you know, mosquitoes and things like that. Then on the sides of the banks you had tanks shooting other tanks, so they weren't just focusing on infantry, they were actually trying to disable each other's tanks. And then obviously you had the infantry playing a long game, snipers, people rushing, people trying to, you know, covert around the side, and it was truly an experience. And I think that when I first saw Dust, I realized, this is very close to that. There has a feeling of that. There has potential of that. But I would say that it's never really been actualized yet. And I think there's probably some simple things that they could do to make this a bit easier. I would almost say that vehicles need to be put at the forefront of the game. So maybe when the maps get a lot bigger, you can't really run solo. Maybe even, you know, LAVs, etc., they're all good, but I think let's make dropships more pliable. Let's make it so that they are better. So I would actually increase the hit points of a dropship massively. Not too much. I think, again, if we're not going to change the forge gun, which I know causes a lot of rage, but if we're not going to change that, then I think you have to kind of say, well, okay, then just give everything a lot more hit points. I would almost then scale back the damage that the turrets do on things. So I would make them have a bonus against vehicles. So tanks can hit tanks at 100%. Maybe they hit, I don't know, infantry at 50, and vice versa. And I would make it so that generally everything has a lot more survivability. The patch 1.4, when it came in, it turned the game from being a 30-second run and gun blast into a much more tactical cover-based shooter. So that was it enriched the game massively. With 1.6, because obviously nothing's going to change to 1.6, I would love to see vehicles really becoming central to the attack of anything. So, I mean, you know, even to the point where certain maps, they need a tank to capture something. I mean, I know the mechanics of this are hard, but I just think this would be so awesome. Maybe literally you had that ability to say, sorry, you know, this capture point is in a position where you need a dropship to get your troops up there. How awesome would that be? I know we have difficulty because obviously if you get into a round where nobody has a dropship or nobody has a tank, you've got a problem. But you know, there has to be a way to do that. Maybe it's just an extra long counter, I don't know. But I just really feel that there's a missed trick when it comes to vehicles in Dust. Because firstly, vehicles are fun. I came to Dust because I saw the dropships and I was like, what is that? That looks like Attack of the Clones. I love it. And I loved the idea of the dropships, sort of picking up troops, dusting down, circling around. I loved it. When I started to play the game, dropships were very good as well. So I actually skilled into dropship quite high. And then all of a sudden, dropships, afterburners were nerfed and they became, well, they became completely pointless. So that's a shame. I think, you know, dropships are cheaper now. I get that. I think, you know, they're more accessible, but, you know, they're still pointless. They're just used to get an advantage on something by getting on top of a building and then immediately dying. Do I really believe that the future of Battlefield will be that disposable? Well, maybe, but I just feel that there's a missed trick, that dropships would actually be a bit more fun if they had more survivability. Don't have to make them any more offensive, just make them infinitely more survivable. So then at least you start to get dropship versus dropship, tank versus tank, because infantry versus infantry is a great game. I would love to see tank versus tank. So I'd make tanks I'd almost make it so tanks are not really able to kill infantry unless they're fit that way. But if they are fit that way, they can have no effect on other tanks. So if you see an infantry killer, you call in your tank killer. Do you see what I mean? This is kind of rock, paper, scissors all the time. And I just think that there has to be something that kind of starts to differentiate, I think, better than we do currently. Anyway, it's a tricky one. I really would love to see the kind of proliferation of vehicles a lot more. I think there's certainly more scope for them. I think particularly when you look at the way that vehicles are used currently as well, you do get, again, this is a further frustration, is that you'll have somebody who is just an incredibly good tanker who will bring out a prototype tank and just wipe the floor with everybody. No matter how many forge guns or AVs you've got, they still kill you. That's just as frustrating. So I'm not kind of advocating, you know, one group of players here. I'm advocating the whole game as a whole, because I would quite happily take this tank and lose its ability to really cripple infantry, as long as I knew that it was a brick. It was a real proper quote tank, and it was able to weather a huge amount of damage, but then really its purpose would be to kill other tanks or to provide support or something like that. Now I know I've heard already there's some pretty good stuff coming that you don't necessarily need turrets on the 1.6 tanks. Now that's going to be interesting. It would be nice to maybe get some remote rep turrets maybe, but we'll see what that tactic brings, because I think there could be quite a nice sort of divergence of different fits then. Currently I'd say tanks are pretty much effective against everything, which again is wrong. Tanks were pretty useless at certain things, you know, they weren't great at, you know, particular roles. Anyway, I think I'd love to see vehicles just used more so than they are today, just because it does feel a bit sort of stupid when you see somebody call it a dropship, they get the dropship, they fly it up to a tall building, and then they crash it and just get out of it. It's like, well, you know, I get that you can do that, but you know, surely the mechanic should be that the dropship is a better platform to work from. Do you know what I mean? Too many people, I think, just at the moment do not use vehicles as they are maybe designed and are using them in a kind of clever ass way. But anyway, what can you do? That's true of every fit in the game, regrettably. It's a funny one. I mean, I would love to see, I think, more vehicles as well. I think I'd love to see the medium transports. I'd love to see what they look like. They look pretty funny, I think, if they come out. I'd love to see the other tanks as well. I can't wait for the Minmatar heavy tank. That'd be pretty funny. Also, I just think things like different turrets as well. The Amar laser turret, that'd be nice. Very nice as well. We'll see how ammo affects this as well. I mean, ammo could become quite a crippling metric, if you like, to tanking, but then again probably not, because most tanks don't sit still for very long, so they'll always be able to get close to a supply depot. Oh well, who knows? I think there's something quite cool coming. I think, you know, the changes that they're doing are fantastic, and I really do hope that the next few changes they do are really around in kind of enlivening the use of vehicles, because I'd quite like to use my dropship again, and I think it would be awesome. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.